If we were standing around the LGBTQ plus water cooler, this is what we think we would all be talking about. It's sponsored by Hot Topic. Hot Topic is an American retail chain with nearly 700 locations specializing in counterculture related clothing and accessories, as well as licensed music. Hot Topic represents many varied interests of the LGBTQ plus community, including music, movies, graphic artists, gaming, and more. Hot Topic features one of the largest collections of pride merchandise that celebrates all aspects of our community. Hot Topics is also a major supporter of the diversity of our LGBTQ plus community and supports many events, festivals, and nonprofit LGBTQ organizations. Very notable is their support of the Trevor Project, the LGBTQ plus community's most important voice for LGBTQ plus young people. And that's why they are the sponsor of It's Happening Out's Hot Topic. All right. Tomorrow is World AIDS Day, and it's a perfect occasion to celebrate amazing events and people within the community. Celebrations like this not only help spread awareness, but also acknowledges people and their effort to make society a better place. In a recent interview with Queer News Tonight, Billy Porter spoke about HIV, AIDS epidemic, and in a different interview that we've done in our World AIDS Day specials, the Honorable Dr. Anthony Fauci discussed how important events like the World AIDS Day Healing Through Art event at Care Resource is.
Well, the answer is very similar to what I said about the importance of fundraising. It just keeps the attention on this. HIV is not over, period. Remember now, we still have in this country a significant number of new infections, 36,000 new infections a year. We still have situation where we don't have access to life-saving therapy to many people in different parts of our country. We have underserved groups. We have underutilized PrEP. Now that we have PrEP that can be given in an injection every couple of months and hopefully soon every 6 months, we can't just say it's over. It's not over. It's not over in the United States, and it's not over globally. True, we've done very, very well. I mean, the whole idea of undetectable equals untransmissible is a huge, huge positive issue that's occurred. Pre-exposure prophylaxis, now that we can do it in such a user-friendly way, is huge. But it's not the end of the game. The end of the game is EHE, ending the HIV epidemic.
Well, our hot topic of the week, of course, is World AIDS Day, as we commemorate the calendar event with features like Dr. Anthony Fauci's exclusive interview, Billy Porter talking about his HIV experience, Care Resource having the World AIDS Day event to inaugurate their new headquarters in downtown Miami, and the celebration of Smart Ride as one of the largest HIV fundraisers in America. What do we think about World AIDS Day?
I think what Dr. Fauci said is completely right. It's something that I think younger and younger generations, it's becoming a memory, and people are starting that process that they forget very quickly that this is not that long ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known people that passed away from HIV AIDS. Like, it's not something that's just, oh, it's long years and years ago. No, it's still happening. People are still getting sick. And I think that having this every year, even if it's just this time of year, having it remind you, you have to pay attention to what's happening out there. It's not it's not free love. It's not just go out and do what you want to do, because that's the rest of your life.
To the point that Auntie makes, Dr. Fauci gave 30 minutes for the interview. Only 10 was scheduled, and he gave us 30. It's very generous, and the only television interview for the LGBTQ community before he retires, right after World AIDS Day. His point was exactly the point you made. He said that the reason why the World AIDS Day is so critically important is because it keeps AIDS and the importance of the fight of AIDS in front of everybody. Yeah. And we discuss in the interview, if you walk down Wilton Drive, the vast majority of the gay men that are on Wilton Drive would not think twice about anything with HIV or AIDS.
No, and they'll say to you, they literally have no problem saying, oh, we have PrEP.
Yeah, and that's it.
And that's it. And here's the, you guys know my wife is a nurse practitioner. She constantly gets people at the hospital that have side effects from these meds that they're taking, all right? A lot of these meds cause other cancers, guys, People don't talk about that either. This is not just a one and done that you get a shot and you're fine. I mean, people still have to be safe. You just do.
Yeah, it's interesting because we kind of sit in that, especially like our age group, I guess, on this side of the table, maybe, sit in that weird, like, technology world.
I'm on this side of the table. By the way.
You're so
Well,
young.
no, where we've kind of, we know the
round table.
repercussions, where we know the repercussions, but we also feel we're in that age or era where we don't have to think about it as much anymore, but the people younger than us never had to think about it. So we're like forcing them to remember history, but they're just living their life. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Like, we're doing so well, we should be proud of that. But like, how are we going to drill it into these kids that it's still prevalent?
But it's in our lifetime where we had a president who couldn't even say the word AIDS publicly.
Yeah.
True.
And that's in our lifetime, and people seem to forget that.
And there's a huge possibility that in our lifetime there might be a cure and it'll be eradicated and it'll be done. We hope so.
The
We hope
goal
that
is
might
2030.
happen. But
The
that's
goal
why
is
those events
2030.
tomorrow we'll be broadcasting live Queer News Tonight from
Right.
Care Resource
Right.
on Biscayne Boulevard, and they're going to have a vigil. They're going to say the people's names, obviously not all of them, they're going to have spoken word. They're going to have, a night dedicated to that. So we don't forget. We shouldn't forget.
No, correct. And
At this point, we all know somebody who has been affected.
Yeah.
More than a handful of people that have been affected. Each of us know.
And being the youngest at the table, I will say, it's not that people don't care in my age group or younger or are not doing anything about it. They're just doing it blindly and with minimal knowledge or history in them. So they're like, oh yeah, I'm on PrEP, I'm fine, and I'm just going to live my life. But they're also learning it from people older than us who are kind of doing the same thing, who may not care as much, unfortunately.
No, and I agree with, and I'm okay with that, is what I was trying to say.
asked
Like,
if you were.
having to drill. I'm gonna show you how okay it is. I was saying, like, I don't want to force it, that history on the youth, because it's just such a sad time. I want to focus on the positivity of it all. Sure, let's have a day of remembrance, right? Like, that's what this day is for, that's coming tomorrow. But it's just hard to think of pounding the negativity when we are in a better place. And it's cool that our kids now can take PrEP and feel safer than we did in our time.
But let's remind them of those times still, regardless.
Yeah.
And that's why LGBTQ plus history is so important. I mean, let's think about during those times when those men, and they had nobody, right?
Yeah.
Who came to their help and their aid and their defense? Lesbians did.
Yeah.
All right? So that means that we were closer as a unit back then than we are now. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm the only lesbian that most of you people hang out with. Not you, Nancy, but you don't know.
I'm curious. I was going to make a joke. Gosh, I hope I can change that.
And you won't.
But you won't.
No, I meant getting rid of the one lesbian.
That's what I got.
Right, he got the joke.
And you won't. And you won't.
No, and again, back to John. And you.
Right. Okay. I'm curious, does anybody have survivor's guilt over AIDS, that HIV? that you're here?
I'm not that old.
I can tell you.
No.
So when I was in high school, I used to work as a volunteer at the local hospital, and this was in the mid '90s. So this is right in the swing of it. Right, it's still happening. And I remember the floor I was assigned to, they had a wing for HIV patients, and it was a lot. Like, for a high school kid, it was a lot, because it was almost treated back then like these are just people waiting to die. That's how, because I was from the rural South, like, this was very misunderstood. And I can tell you that a few of those people, I still think about them often. Like, they sit on my mind. I always remember this one case. It was a mother who had gotten it from a male partner, and she had a child. Child had nowhere else to go. Child was sleeping in the hospital room, in the same room with the mother, because that was all she had, and the mother was on her way out. And often I think about those things, because I think that, much like so many of the issues that we talk about now, we reduce things so much to queer and straight. And unfortunately, this is affecting everyone. And I just wish so much that we would look at this as it actually is, which is a health crisis. Like what Jonathan was saying, part of the problem with the younger generation is that parents and teachers and schools, they're all closing their eyes and not even mentioning these things, not talking about it. And then these kids get released into the world and they don't have the tools necessary to even combat these things.
And they're also not exposed to it. I think that I don't feel guilty, like survival's guilt. I feel guilty because I was one of those people that was judgmental, like, oh, they're whores. If they got it, it's because they were being sleazy or they were being unsafe.
And now you're the whore.
Now I'm the whore,
yeah.
Right. No, what happened is I met enough people that had sex once, or it was with a life partner. It was someone they thought they were going to marry, or that they were going to spend the rest of their...
Or like Auntie Mame said, a woman that got it from her husband that was on the down low with other people.
Right, and it changed my world. It really did, because I know, even though I wouldn't voice it, in my head, that's exactly where my brain would go is, oh, what were they doing, type of thing, you know?
Then you found compassion.
Of course, yeah. So many friends that have passed and so many friends that are alive today, thank God, because of the leaps and bounds we've made in medicine. Yeah. But if it wasn't for them just being in my circle, I would have never come out of that fucking weird judgy place.
You know, it's interesting to me. I ask you the question of, do you have survivor's guilt? And no one even begins to say that that AIDS rises to the level of having survivor's guilt. That's interesting, and I'm glad. But it's an indication of the difference of experiences here in the table. Because for me, in the 1980s, if you were alive and you don't have HIV, you have survivor's guilt.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because in the 1980s, we did not use condoms. And so the very significant majority of those that contracted and unfortunately ultimately died were not the tops. They were the bottoms. I was top. I did not contract HIV. But in the 1980s, condoms were not a aggressively marketed or embraced use of the idea.
It wasn't easy access to them either.
And of safe sex. So that was one thing that went on in the 1980s. I went to dozens of funerals. Dozens. I went to dozens of vigils where the friend would be on the bed and there would be 20 people in the room, just to touch, just to let them know there was somebody there, where there would be a dozen gay men around the gay man in the bed. And I'm saying dozens of experiences like that. And I go, when a World AIDS Day comes around, or we talk about HIV, and then I ask, do you all have those experiences? No, nobody has those experiences. It is very definitive based on time.
Exactly.
In this interview with Dr. Fauci said, and it's breathtaking, it's going to bring people to a stop. He said, and I'm paraphrasing now, but I'm getting this paraphrase correct, that he called LGBTQ community the most spectacular cohort in history. And I thought, wow, that's a really interesting reference, that he would call a community designation in a medical scientific term of a cohort. And he goes, they're the most spectacular cohort in history. Of all communities in American history, LGBT, from his standpoint, is the most spectacular. That's what he says. And then he goes on to say that the LGBTQ community saved millions of lives all around the world. And what he means is, for the first 15 years of AIDS, the LGBT community, especially gay men, being tended to by lesbians, were taking it completely on the chin. And everything that NIH and Fauci learned was from gay community. And what they learned from them, and the commitment of the Larry Kramers and the ACT UPs and the violence and the we're going to scream and scream and scream, forced everyone around to move beyond the Ronald Reagan that I can't even say AIDS. And Fauci credits the gay community for saving millions of lives because they were willing to do that. Survivor's guilt. And just one last thing before we move out of World AIDS Day. I was with Chuck in 1987, and the first time that I was ever tested for AIDS was in 1987. Now, I had been sexually active for a number of years, but it was the first time I ever had an AIDS test, and I had been with Chuck for 2 years. And when we went to get tested, we had to make an appointment. We had to make an appointment. We couldn't be in the clinic at the same time. They would not recognize Al and Chuck as one unit. So no, you can't even be in the building. You'll have to wait outside. Who's going to go first? I'll go first. Al. Chuck was petrified. Go in and get tested. 1987. Chuck stands and waits outside. It takes a while. Find out after I get tested. They tell me what I'm going to do. The test results don't come for 2 weeks.
14 days.
That's right.
Yeah.
14 days. Wait, I'm going to have to worry about whether I have AIDS
Yes.
for 14 days? Yes, and don't find that out until the end. I go out. Chuck is crying already. He hugs me. He's absolutely certain he has AIDS. 1987. It's a long time in the testing process, so I'm sitting in the car. I will never forget until my last day on Earth. Every time World AIDS Day comes around, I think about it again, and other times. I'm sitting in the car where I can look through the windshield and directly at the door of the clinic. And it's a little sidewalk, and about 10 steps, and then a left turn into the parking lot to walk to the car of me sitting. Chuck comes out and looks me in the eye from across the parking lot and busts out crying. He doesn't know anything. He's only been tested. He's not going to find out for 2 weeks. But he busts out crying just simply looking at me, knowing this is the end. It's over. No one, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
No one will ever have that experience. And the reason the Fauci interview is so good is the first person in the straight community I have ever heard say so clearly, we know exactly where hundreds of thousands of you went through. 2 weeks later, we go back for the testing, and they won't let us be in the room to tell us. We're not going to read, they're going to verbally tell us. And they won't let us be in the building at the same time. We're so disrespected in 1987. You can't even be in the building at the same time. I get it first, you're negative. I do not have AIDS. I come out, I go, I'm negative. Chuck busts out crying again because he knows, he had, you know, the slut shaming.
Yeah.
He busts out crying again because he knows what the conclusion's going to be. He goes in. He's negative. Our community in the AIDS has gone through so much. And I just tell this story. I wasn't planning to tell this story. But I tell this story because when I walk down Wilton Drive and all of these gay men go, what's the big deal about AIDS, HIV? You'll never know.
They won't.
They won't.
You'll never know.
And it's stories like these we need to hear. And so I personally, especially as the youngest one, want to thank you for your campaign.
You've already said that shit twice. We know you're the youngest one.
You're welcome.
So
It's more of a reminder for you, Faye.
okay.
But
Yeah,
just
no,
wanna-
I don't need to be
But,
reminded.
but I want to say thank you because people need to hear stories like that.
Yes.
We have access to articles and news reports on our phones and everything, but we don't have the actual personal stories that are touching and moving.
Tomorrow, World AIDS Day, it's very, very important for a lot of people that have the kind of stories that I feel. But for everyone, AIDS, HIV is not over. Let's hope it will be. That's our goal for 2023, or for 2030 rather. But it is not over. And respect all of the LGBTQ community and all of our allies in the straight community that have endured a lot in the last 40 years. They
And this
have.
segment was brought to you by Kleenex.
Hold on. Let me get it. Oh, sorry. Sorry, they're sweaty. Never
There was
mind.
no plan to have this
Never mind.
conversation.
They're sweaty.
Okay. LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out Television Network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.